Well, National Coordinator Network on Police Reform in Nigeria, OKECHUKWU NWANGUMA, is here in the studio. Good morning and thanks for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning.
Well, it does look like with the latest kidnapping of this traditional ruler, the Oniba of Iba, the new IG of police has his job cut out for him. Then it's even more worrisome when you hear that some of the abductors actually came in, in military uniform, army and navy uniform. What does this, portend?
Well, it's quite shocking, and that this trend is on the rise again, and that the security forces are unable to deal with this situation. Because from the report, you could hear that there were police officers around, and these people came in military and police uniform. And I think that it's worrisome because there is need to find out whether these people are actually security agents or people in disguise, and why it is difficult for security agents to intervene and deal with this situation each time it arises.
All right, now we know that there are some of these kidnappings, many of this kind of people getting missing sometimes that don't even make it to the media. People don't get to know about them. Now, you are privy to some information working with the police and all of that. Give us a picture of just how bad this trend is right now.
Yeah, just like you rightly said, the case of the Oba came to the public, knowledge because that's an Oba. There are several, less privileged Nigerians who are kidnapped every day, and by certain statistics, Nigeria accounts for about 26% of kidnappings across the world. And so for me, this is quite...
it really is a serious problem then. Now, looking at just like we just said here, the Badagry reports where we're told some 39 children since this year have disappeared without any trace. But the police, on the one hand, is telling us that, look, it's really being over-exaggerated, that we have only about 3 or so cases have actually been reported. Now, looking at this Oniba's case, based on this report, it does seem that the police are not, living up to expectation when it comes to the ability to actually respond as quickly as possible.
It was quite heartwarming to Nigerians when the case of the schoolgirls in Ikorodu.
Yeah, Babington,
yes,
Macaulay.
But I mean, that was actually an exception to the rule. The rule is that most of the times security agencies are not able to, effectively, intervene to rescue. For instance, we are still talking about the Chibok girls, where which has remained a very bad spot in our history, and then several other cases, like even in Ikorodu, every day we hear about people from coming through the river, to abduct people, to burn houses, kill people, and and each time, the security agencies tend to play down on the number, of people involved, and I think this is not quite good. It's clearly, there's need for, to make to equip the security agencies to be able to deal with it, because security is the basic, duty of any government.
Is it really an issue of equipping the police? I mean, take Lagos State, for example.
Exactly. I was going to come to that.
Because they've been investing so much.
Lagos State has the highest record of police funding from the Security Trust Fund and intervention here and there. Lagos State Police has the most sophisticated equipment when it comes to comparison between here and other states in the country and so on. So one would think that should also treat into coordinated security and some feeling of safety.
I think it also sometimes it has to do with terrain, because I mean, if you take the case of the Ikorodu, where so-called militants are coming from across, other states, from across the Niger Delta, the terrain is not such that our security agents are trained instead of whatever equipment they have, to deal with this. And I think it may also speak to issue of, the how our security agencies feel about the way they are treated, their morale, their commitment to duty seems to also come into question. So it's quite too many things come into it, both in terms of ability to even make use of this equipment they have, and then their morale, because there's a sense in which security agencies in Nigeria say Nigeria is not good. I mean, you can't put your life on the line for this country because of.
Is that where the real problem is? Beyond throwing money at or making money available for the police, equipping them and all of that.
Their morale.
The morale is at the lowest ebb. So what will it take really to shoot up the morale of the average policeman?
There are a lot of grievances. As I speak today, there are a lot of grievances within the Nigerian police force, and this is arising not just from issues of, a lot of them feel that they are shortchanged in promotion, in terms of, and even there are a lot of issues, and we get these feelers from them. This
talk
is not
to us
just,
about some of these issues. I mean, you talk
yes,
about
talking about promotions. A lot of Nigerian, there's a lot of grievances within Nigerian police force today that they're not willing. Their dedication to duty is in question because they feel bad and they think that something needs to be done for them in terms of their pay and all those.
But is this just about the Nigerian police, or is the Nigerian system? Do you find the same kind of low morale in the SSS and in the NSCDC and so on and so forth from what you've gathered?
I think that the Nigerian police seems to be the most underfunded of all the security agencies. And if you even come to look at it, all these other agencies are created, as a response to the inability of the Nigerian police force to discharge their functions, rather than actually make them work. The response seems to be to marginalize the police and then create other agencies to do the job that Nigerian police are supposed to be doing. So we need to actually return back and look at this institution, which is actually under the law, the only law enforcement agency that the Constitution, sets up.
Indeed, reading up on this, I came across a write-up where there was a claim that you have the spike in kidnapping because things like vandalism and all of that, there's a massive crackdown on them, and so because they're not able to make a living or eke out a living from this, you now have kidnapping as the only other option to make money. When you look at kidnapping in Nigeria in general, against the backdrop of the Oniba of Iba's case, would you say they're more political, or they're just basically economical? They just want to make money.
Or maybe just criminal.
Criminal.
Because as we speak, these kidnappers have not made contact with the family. So it raises some more concern whether it is about we're making money or somebody trying to settle scores. So it will still be left to speculation. We hope that they will be able to make contact with family so that we know exactly what there is. But just like you were saying, I think that there are a lot of people have been displaced from their means of livelihood, whether these means are legitimate or not. So, but the point remains that there is a lot of joblessness in this country, and young people take resort to criminality. In the past, of course, that kidnapping began with a political objective, which was, of course, in the Niger Delta, the militants who were trying to use it to force the hand of the government to accede to certain, political demands. But now it has moved away from politics to pure, criminality. So until these people make contact, it will be difficult to say whether it is actually about, demanding ransom or somebody wanting to settle score with the other.
All right, talking about ransom issues, we often know that anytime there's a case of kidnap, there's always this expectation of the fact that there's going to be a call from the abductors, and then demand for this and demand for that, as the case may be. But at the end of the day, whether the police is involved or not, even the family, nobody really agrees. So much money was paid as ransom. Why is it like
It's
that?
always shrouded in secrecy.
And I think it is. We've also had cases where ransom were paid. The police said no ransom was paid, and the family comes out to say we paid ransom.
Paid so
even
much.
in the case of the former secretary to the government,
Olufalaye, exactly.
The IG personally came out to say no ransom was paid, but the man came out and said. So I think it's an attempt by the security agencies to hide their inefficiency, their inability to do what they are set up under the law to do.
All right, I will of course continue with our questioning, but let's bring you more on this. Now let's take a look at other cases of kidnappings in Nigeria. The rate of kidnapping in Nigeria has risen considerably in the last 10 years. Not less than 1,500 people are kidnapped on an annual basis in the country.
Now, some factors that have been linked to the increase in the rate of kidnappings are the widening gap between the rich and the poor, and the fact that most kidnappers don't get prosecuted has also given impetus to more people to join the trade. Now, some prominent cases of kidnapping include the abduction of elder statesman and former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Chief Olufalaye, in his farm on his 77th birthday in Ondo State.
Also, the abduction of former Minister of State for Education, Senator Iyabo Anishulowo in Ogun State. The permanent secretary of Osun State Ministry of Finance, Adebimpe Ogunlumade, and 2 others were abducted by unknown gunmen along Obajana-Lokoja Expressway, Kogi State. And in Ondo State, 2 Reverend sisters were kidnapped along Ore-Shagamu Road on May the 12th. They have, well, thankfully, since been rescued. Now, you have, the people that are kidnapped, from politicians to ordinary people, to Reverend sisters, to obas, to
pastors
children.
And reverends,
yes, and
imams, and so on.
Even ordinary people who
Yeah.
can afford the ransom being demanded. They just meet, these days, by the way you dress, they assume, so everybody becomes a victim. It's no longer a problem for the rich or the the wealthy
does
society.
that mean each time I think about going on my regular morning walk when I'm not on duty here, I should have some kind of some level of fear? So what do I do?
maybe.
Or concern? What do I do? What does the ordinary Nigerian do in that situation, to protect?
It's difficult to say
themselves?
because truth remains that everybody is now a potential victim. And what we need to do then, for me, it's because basically protection of the citizens is the basic duty of the security, of security agencies. So we need to look at the, what do we do? What should government do to enable security agencies to, discharge their duty of protecting the Nigerians? Maybe there are certain personal precautionary measures people should take. I can't say exactly now, but the truth remains that these people are all over the place, and anybody can be a victim. So there's need for everybody to be careful, where you go, when you go, and how you dress,
All right, so that means one has to look at the way you dress sometimes.
Okay, I don't know about that one.
All right, but however, we're trying to reel out some information earlier. Some recent cases of kidnaps gone wrong includes that of an army colonel, Samaila Inusa, who was found dead after days his abduction in Kaduna State. Now, another of such cases, that of the king of Ubuluku Kingdom in Aniocha North local government area of Delta State, Obi Akaize Ofulwe III, who was kidnapped and killed.
Another troubling issue is the murder, and just last week, of a lawmaker representing Ore-Lokpe State constituency in Oyo State House of Assembly, Honorable Gideon Aremu, who was killed by unknown gunmen. But a governorship aspirant in the just concluded All Progressives Congress governorship primary in Edo State, Kesle Omo Irabo, escaped an assassination attempt after gunmen broke into his home in Delta State.
Now, Freedom House reports that Nigeria recorded one of the highest rates of kidnapping in the world in 2013, coming after Mexico and India, due to the recent increase in the spate of kidnappings, and also in a bid to curb the menace. Some states have signed the death penalty as the ultimate punishment for convicted kidnappers. The states are Edo, Delta, Oyo, and Cross River states.
Well, the question then is, I mean, would the death sentence really solve the problem? Do you think so?
Death sentence has not, it has not been shown that it has, it's a deterrent to any crime, because already we have armed robbery, all these are crimes that attract death penalty, but it doesn't, So for me, I think it is to address the socio-economic root causes. I think the point is actually to address the root cause rather than prescribing. The death sentence has not been shown to be a deterrence to any crime. And as a matter of fact, under international human rights law, there is a movement away from death penalty because it's been found not to be a solution to any problem.
But in this case, from most of the kidnappings we have often heard about, there hasn't been much of arrests and then prosecution. Who do we hold that failure responsible? Is it the judicial system or just the police, in fact?
The duty to protect and security is the basic duty of government. So ultimately, the buck stops on the table of the president, who is actually the operational head of the Nigerian police. He is not the Inspector General of Police, that is the operational head. He's the president. And I'm worried that we haven't really had any strong statement coming from him. The police are presently constituted from what we see. And that is why every now and then you find that the military are deployed to deal with internal issues, which actually are meant for the police.
All right, of course, we'll come back to that. But let's remind our viewers on TVCE that you can continue to watch TVC Breakfast on TVC Nigeria on Concert Channel 190, DSTV 418.
You can also watch on GoTV 45 and ACTV 510. All right, thanks for staying with us on TVC Breakfast. This morning we're discussing the spate and rate of kidnapping in Nigeria. And we have in the studio OKECHUKWU NWANGUMA. He's the National Coordinator of Network of Police Reform in Nigeria. And we've been talking about this. Now, let's come back to our issue now. We were talking about the rate of kidnapping, and some of these things affect the average anybody. It doesn't necessarily have to mean high-profile people generally. Now, when steps have to be taken preventing kidnapping, like we were talking about before, as in any other normal person on a daily basis, what kind of concern, what kind of approach, what kind of tactics or strategy should any individual take in order to look out for some of these things?
Well, I think that it calls for, basically, because everybody has become a
potential target, like you
victim,
said earlier.
yes, and so it's for us to bear this in mind and measure, how we move about. It imposes some restriction on our movements. Even in terms of children, because we also find situations where children in school buses are also kidnapped. So people are becoming more careful now these days. So basically it's for us to restrict our movements and the time we move. Of course, it might be good to, not just to move alone, because it's easier to be targeted when you're alone than when you're moving in a group. So these are, there are a number of other precautionary measures that people need to take. Bearing in mind,
that of course means that security operatives, government in itself, that should be providing security for the people, have actually failed.
Nigerians are on their own.
Looking at the case in Badagry, for example, it makes you wonder how porous our borders are. I mean, if 39 children are said to have been missing in that area alone, should we be looking seriously at the borders? Because there's a possibility that it's a free movement of people.
Yeah, certainly. Over the years, this has been a persistent problem of our borders not being effectively manned and secured, and this is why a lot of these people come from across the borders. And so there's need for our immigration and customs officials to be more alive, more awake, to be awake to their duties of. But of course, there are, apart from there are some routes that are not. There are multiple routes. So there's need for our security agencies, and of course we find that in the north, for instance, apart from the security agency, we also have civilian JTF. I think we need to begin to also cultivate, the support of people who volunteer their services, citizens, to assist in securing our borders.
All right, OKECHUKWU NWANGUMA, thank you very much for joining us on TVC Breakfast.